morning. I am Carol Katzman, Chair of the Board of Directors of Vista Del Mar, and on behalf of the board, I am so thrilled to welcome you this morning to our first Autism Conference on campus. For over 100 years, Vista has served the children of Los Angeles, beginning as a Jewish orphanage, and today it has evolved to an accredited and nationally recognized mental health agency with over 45 programs providing assistance to over 5,000 children and families annually, who often turn to us when they have no place else to go. Today, we are so proud of our newest program, serving children on the autism spectrum. Through the generosity of Marcia and Henry Barron, we have established the Barrett School at Julia Ann Singer for pre-K through 6th grade. We are now an emerging autism resource, providing a broad array of services, including education, speech therapy, occupational therapy, theater programs, bar and bat mitzvah preparation, and counseling for children and families. At Vista, we celebrate the abilities within the disability through a strength-based program that provides a welcoming atmosphere. I love the quotation from Christopher Reeves, who persevered despite adversity. Anyone can give up. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. But to hold it together when everyone else would understand if you fell apart, that's true strength. To our noted and distinguished speakers, we look forward to gaining strength and learning from you. And to our sponsors, professionals, supporters, staff, and friends who have joined us, thank you. We're looking forward to sharing a wonderful day. And if this is your first visit to Vista Del Mar, please come back again so we can give you a personally guided tour to explain our many programs. And be sure to leave a business card so that we can add you to our database and invite you to all of the wonderful events that go on at Vista. Now let me begin the day by introducing Dr. Elias Lepperman, President and CEO of Vista Del Mar.
I love when Carol goes first because I don't have to say anything else. All done. But I too want to welcome everybody to Vista, and I want to thank all of you for being here, and I want to thank our distinguished speakers for being here. It makes for a great day. Well, I would like to now welcome up our human dynamo, a star in her own right, a star of stage and screen, Elaine Hall, who is the director of our Inspire program, and is inspiring herself. Let's hear it.
Wow, what a turnout. This is amazing. We are so honored that all of you are here today to celebrate autism. The speakers who we've brought today are some of the most inspirational and respected speakers in the world, not just the country, but in the world. And I have the pleasure of introducing two of them to you. The first speaker is a dear friend and colleague, and he's up all hours of the night, which is great because we IM each other, and he's in Japan or China, or he's all over the world, and we fortunately have him here today at Vista. Dr. Stephen Shore is an internationally known speaker, consultant, and author. He has written numerous books, which you'll get to see at the break, including co-authoring Autism for Dummies. So anyone that wants a crash course in autism, make sure you get that. And Stephen is also a musician, a professor at Adelphi University in New York, and he is, and this is what you probably don't know, and I just found out last night, that Stephen is the first person with, what was that? Did you hear that sound? Yeah, standing here. He is the first person with autism to teach a university course on autism in the world. So here's the man we've all been waiting for, Dr. Stephen Shore.
all part of the autism community. We have parents. How many parents of people with autism do we have? Oh, a whole lot. Good. Other family members? All right, good. And how many people are going deaf from the feedback? So if we could have someone, oh, there is somebody back there trying to do something about that. We have educators. How many educators do we have here of various sorts? Some people are doing double duty, that's good. We have therapists. How many therapists? A whole pile of them. Good, triple duty. And there's all kinds of us. Anybody who comes in contact with someone on the spectrum, we're part of the autism community. And then, of course, there is those of us with autism. How many people with autism are here? Well, there'll be more of you by the time we're done. So a little bit about my life and experiences. Things were pretty typical for me. After a typical birth and 18 months of typical development, well, let's just say at 24 hours of age, my wife says, I look like an egg. Then at 18 months, what I call the autism bomb hit, usually referred to as progressive autism, where there was a loss of functional communication, tantrums, self-stimulatory activity, withdrawal from the environment, and pretty significant autistic characteristics. My parents had no idea what to do. It took them a whole year to find a place for diagnosis. And when they finally got that diagnosis when I was 2.5, they were told to send me off to an institution. The doctors had never seen a child who was so sick. Well, like so many of you parents here, my parents advocated on my behalf, and they convinced the school to take me in about a year. And it was during that year that my parents provided what we would today refer to as an intensive, home-based early intervention program, emphasizing music, movement, sensory integration, narration, and imitation. So in today's terms, it would probably look something like a more developmental cognitive or affective approach. Something like Miller method, or DIR, RDI, TERS, and so on. And I think what we're all here to see and what we're all aiming for is to show that autism doesn't have to be quite the bomb that we expect it to be. When a child is diagnosed, it seems like life is never going to be the same. And the truth is, life is never the same. The child on the spectrum, the parents, educators, and so on. But with today's awareness, with the prevalence rate now up to 1 in 91, the prevalence rate keeps increasing. Probably within the next generation, there's going to be more of us than there are of you. We're taking over. And knowing what we now have the ability to make success, fulfillment, and productivity the rule rather than the exception. And autism doesn't have to be quite the bomb that many of us, or many people might originally think it is. And that's what I talk about in my newly released video, Living Along the Autism Spectrum, what it means to have autism. So let's just take a quick peek at that.
Actually, there's an awful lot we do. We do know what treatment helps. We do know how to diagnose. And we do know the human cost of autism. Joining us today are Dr. Robert Nassif and Dr. Stephen Shore. They will shed light for us on the human cost of autism and the human benefits.
The human benefits. We need to hear more of them. The benefits of autism. And just as a brief aside, as Elaine mentioned, I am now a professor at Delphi University. And part of the reason that I was hired was because I am on the autism spectrum. Not in spite of it, not getting around it, but because I am. And yeah, so a round of applause for Delphi University. And the idea, which is slowly gaining traction, is that I'm seeing more and more people being higher because there are certain characteristics, certain strengths that people with autism have, and companies are slowly becoming enlightened. Well, I think we really need that. And for this reason, they're getting higher. So where does autism come from? Well, before we start that, let us sing to the tune of Where, Oh, Where Has This Little Dog Gone? Ready? Go. Where, oh, where did this autism come from? Oh, where can it be? From the series how long and eye contact cut short. Oh, where can it be from? All right, that's pretty good. I think with a little more rehearsal, we'll be ready for the winter concert. And what we're looking at here are where researchers are expending most of their energies into the causality of autism. The best way to summarize this is that most people believe that we start out with a genetic predisposition, which then gets triggered by something else. And I think there's a lot to be said for genetics. I remember the first child I worked with, when I met the father, I said, "Hey Dad, you know, I think you're autistic." He didn't like that. Well, then I found out that the father didn't eat solid foods until he was 9½. He has what I call a negative autism diagnosis from Children's Hospital in Boston after spending 6 months outpatient. The result was, "Dear Mom and Dad, your child cannot be autistic because he's talking." Well, now we know what that's called. And now Dad realizes that if he's not on the autism spectrum, he's awfully darn close, which helps him understand his son, who is more severely impacted and is nonverbal. But he communicates using augmented communication devices. So anyways, there's a lot of research into the causes of autism. That's one thing that makes autism a little bit slippery. We don't quite know what causes it. There's a lot of people focused on curing autism. I don't think that's a good idea. Whenever people start getting into the idea of certain people need to be cleaned or cured or whatever, then we kind of run into trouble. It happened in World War II and it's happening in various other countries. But we can put all of this research to good use by figuring out how to best help people on the autism spectrum. So as we look at autism, we're all familiar with our friendly DSM-4 exercise and the focus on challenges and communication. We know what that looks like: socialization, restricted interest, repetitive emotion. And there's a common thread that ties together all of these descriptors and diagnostic procedures. It's a deficit model. The child gets diagnosed, what's the first thing the parents, teacher, or anybody else hears? These are all the things that the person won't be able to do. But what about the things that he can do? What about the man with high-functioning autism working in Paddington Station, providing public transportation system information to lost patrons? He uses his verbal communication skills, which, for those of us who are verbal, tend to be, how many people will vote for direct? Factual, to the point, repetitive. Is this how you want to receive your information when you're lost, or do you want to be wading through idioms and jokes? So that worked out. Where does he get this information? His coworkers have to look it up in a reference. He's got it all memorized. So instead of calling it a restricted interest, maybe we'd be better off calling it a focused interest or a passion. And let's find a way to use this focused interest or passion. The autism spectrum. That's how most people look at autism. Most of us look at autism. Most of society thinks of autism as something that's more severe. A small nonverbal child rocking in the corner, half having self-abusive behavior. Now the question is, what happens to this child after about 15 years? Who wants to tell me? He grows up. And that's a really important concept. Now, sometimes we can go for rounds. Some people will say, well, they get better in socialization, or they may go into an institution, but really they grow up. Small autistic children become large autistic children. We become adults.